Coming to you from the Lake of the Ozarks in mid-Missouri, this is GovLove, a podcast about local government. GovLove is produced by ELGL, the Engaging Local Government Leaders Network. You can support GovLove by joining ELGL and taking advantage of access to events, resources, and other networking opportunities. Visit elgl.org to learn more about membership types and to join today. I'm Lauren Palmer, a partner with EverStrive Solutions and your host for this episode. Today, my guests are Rochelle Haynes and Carrie Bishop of the What Works Cities certification program, launched by Bloomberg Philanthropies and led by Results for America. Rochelle is the managing director of What Works Cities, a program that recognizes and celebrates local governments for their exceptional use of data to inform policy decisions, allocate funding, and improve services. And Carrie leads the data and AI portfolio as part of the government innovation team at Bloomberg Philanthropies. Today, we are visiting about the latest innovations in data-driven local governance, including emerging applications for AI in service delivery. Rochelle and Carrie, welcome to GovLove.
Lauren, thank you for having us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Great. So glad that you could both join us. And I'm very eager to hear about your work with What Works Cities. But to start, we're going to have our signature lightning round so we can get to know both of you a little bit better. So Rochelle, my first question, I'm going to start with you. What genre or era of music best describes your personality?
Great. I love music, so I really enjoyed this question and spent some time thinking about it. I will say R&B music, and I will pick R&B as my favorite genre because I feel like whether it's an up-tempo song or a slow-tempo R&B song, there's lots of storytelling involved, and I can vividly remember places and things I was doing for certain songs throughout my childhood and adult life, and so R&B music for me.
Okay, awesome. Isn't that true? Like music is just like listening to a memory. Do you have like a favorite R&B live music event that you want to tell us about?
Ooh, my favorite R&B live music event. How can I not mention Beyonce? Because no one gives the queen. No one does a concert quite like her. I'm a frequent concert goer. I have seen Prince in concert live, so I'm going to put them neck and neck because he's, just one of the greatest all-time artists ever. And in his shows, you couldn't have phones, and so you were fully present for 2.5, 3 hours, and he captivated our attention. And then Beyonce today, because you're going to get singing, you're getting dancing, you're getting costumes and high energy. And so those are my two all-time favorites.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Carrie, what about you? What genre or era of music best describes your personality?
Well, I'm going to take it British and highly specific, so bear with me here, but early UK garage, which I guess in American you would pronounce garage, but in the UK it's pronounced garage. It's like an early kind of late 90s, early 2000s music scene where it was like super raw, super authentic, very energetic, very collaborative, different artists working together and remixing with each other. And so I feel like that kind of sums up my personality. It's also one of my favorite genres, but like Rochelle, I'm a big music fan as well. So my tastes are eclectic to use that word. And I think garage is one of those really authentic types of music that speaks to more my personality type.
That was so awesome. When you first started sharing, I had like a panic moment where I thought, I have never heard of garage music. What is she talking about? How am I going to follow up on this? So thank you for clarifying that. Garage music. Got it. Appreciate learning the British interpretation of that. I love your spin on this question, how you think of that genre of music as being collaborative and that tying into your personality. That's a very local government themed thing to say. I love it. All right, next question. Carrie, we're going to let you go first. What's something you're reading, watching, or listening to that you would recommend to our GovLove audience?
Well, I am obsessed with a podcast right now called Things Fell Apart. It's hosted by John Ronson, and I'm guessing your audience is podcast listeners. So I think we're on target here. And it's really a kind of cultural commentary with some human interest. And it takes a look at sort of where we are today in society and traces the origins like right back to understand how we got to where we are. It's super fascinating. It's very surprising and delighting and kind of quirky in a way. So highly recommend that one.
All right, listeners, you heard it here. Anytime someone's going to describe something as surprising and delightful and quirky, I think that's something we need to check out. So tell me again, it's Things Fell Apart?
Things Fell Apart by
Okay.
John Ronson.
Okay, got it. I'm writing that down right now. I've got it on a sticky note next to my desk. Perfect. All right, Rochelle, what about you? Something you're reading, watching, or listening to that you'd recommend to our audience?
Absolutely. So I just returned from a recent trip to Rome, Italy. And so the election of the new pope was top of mind for me in my visit. And so Conclave is the movie that I'm going to recommend. It was deeply fascinating about the politics. Of the Vatican, of the choice of Pope, and what the thought process that goes into it. And prior to this movie, I don't know that I was as deeply aware of the process of it all. And now having an American Pope and Pope Leo selection, I think the movie is deeply fascinating on all the things that go into that selection. And so that's one thing I would recommend.
Yeah, very interesting. I agree. I really enjoyed that movie. And what you said, like for people in our audience who are interested in government and democracy and how decisions get made, I agree. I thought it was really kind of interesting to see the politics behind the scenes. All right, very good. All right, one final question. Rochelle, we'll let you go first. What is your most controversial non-political opinion?
I thought really long and hard about this one, Lauren. I think one of the things that probably came to mind and cable over streaming. And I know it makes me sound like a little old lady, but I'm going to take it because by the time you subscribe to every streaming service you would need to have live TV, regular television, the movies you want to see, old and new, in my opinion, you're paying about the same price as cable. And so it's a choice. So that's my non-controversial, non-political opinion.
Yeah, this is a good one. I have not heard this opinion expressed. Like, I honest to goodness don't even know. Can you still just get a cable subscription?
You can.
Okay, yeah, I really didn't know this. I think you're onto something. Like, I'm annoyed by the amount of app subscriptions that are happening in my household, and I'm trying to rein it in big time. And getting some pushback from my loved ones. It does seem inefficient, right? Like, wasn't this easier before?
It was supposed to make our lives easier and you could tailor your content. But by the time each service subscribes to certain things and you bundle it all together, it's cable. Yeah. It's just different avenues and different sign-ins that I have to remember. That's all.
Yeah, so true. And I've kind of built my consumption around I no longer have a Netflix subscription, but my sister has a Netflix subscription. So I kind of keep a list of these are things that I want to watch if I'm hanging out over at my sister's house, which just, again, not the most efficient way to consume entertainment content, but I'm probably watching less, which is probably good for my brain. Okay, good one. Thank you. You got me thinking there, Rochelle. Carrie, what about you? What's your most controversial non-political opinion?
I think the word learnings should be banned. So let me explain why.
Oh, please.
Learning is a verb and learnings is a noun, but learning is a verb, and we've sort of made a noun out of a verb, and it sounds wrong. The word is lessons. That's the word we should be using. And so whenever people say learnings, I don't know, I get a funny feeling inside, and I think it's lessons. So that's my controversial. It's very controversial because literally everyone I know says it, but there you have it. You asked for something controversial.
I'm on your team with this. Lessons. This makes a lot of sense.
Let's form some sort of movement,
Yeah. Okay. Hashtag it's lessons. Got it. But the idea here that I love talking about learning, and we're going to learn some things today from both of you. So let's get into the heart of our interview. I always like to start my interviews by just hearing about your career path. And I've learned through doing this work that people have all sorts of interesting career pathways into the work that they're doing in and around local government. So, Rochelle, let's start with you. Kind of tell us your career history and how you landed in your current role.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lauren. So I grew up in New York City. And I think growing up here, in New York, I was exposed to the stark disparities between communities, right? The communities that just were a few blocks away. And you could see the differences in infrastructure, education resources, and opportunities. And you could see the difference in how a zip code determines someone's access to quality education, safe public spaces, and economic mobility. And part of my childhood experience was being a child who experienced those stark differences. And so I started my career with sort of a North Star of like, how do I work on things that can help, close those economic divides? How do I work on things that can be able to break those cycle of poverties that I was seeing? It shouldn't matter if your zip code shouldn't determine whether or not you had a good quality education. And so I started my work really focusing on housing, right? Because that's the root of it, or it feels like a basic human right in many ways, that all folks should have access to affordable housing. And so I started my career working for a disability rights organization, advocating for a sort of affordable, accessible housing development. My career then shifted to working in New York City government and being a public servant, where I focused not only on affordable housing, but working on all the policies and programs and operations that go into making sure that folks have equal opportunity, and equal opportunity to whether it's education, whether it's housing or economic opportunities. And so I worked a lot on public benefit programs and policies and advocating for it in various roles in New York City government. I remember during my time of being a public servant, I think one of the things that stood out to me is we were always so busy trying to meet the demands of the day. All right, you're running a city, and it's very demanding, that we often didn't get the space and time to be able to pull up and be strategic, to be innovative, but yet required to do so. And so there was always that tension I felt as a public servant. And so since then, I eventually left local government. And since then, I've been working in spaces in philanthropic and nonprofit sector that work adjacent with cities, being able to provide resources, whether those resources are helping them think through how to mitigate the effects of climate change, from work at 100 Resilient Cities to actually work with Sesame Workshop, where we were providing resources to help families deal with traumatic experiences and help kids with that, because we know by not addressing those adverse childhood experiences, they have long-term outcomes and directly connected to poverty. And so it's always been this common thread for me throughout my career of how am I working in spaces on policies and programs that are helping to end the cycle of poverty, helping folks bridge that economic divide and create affordable and accessible opportunities for all.
Got it. Wonderful. Thank you. Carrie, what about you? Tell us your career story.
Sure. Well, I'll start right now. As you mentioned in the intro, I lead the data and AI portfolio here at Bloomberg Philanthropies, and we work with cities around the globe, helping them improve their data and their AI capabilities, connect them to a huge network of innovators across the public sector around the world. And so, in the classic movie style, you're probably wondering how I got here. I started out, actually, one of my very first jobs was working in local government in the UK. I applied to a graduate program that brought people straight out of undergrad into public sector, and really was lucky to be placed in a city with a little borough, part of London, it was kind of underperforming, but there was so much opportunity to improve things that at a very young age, actually, just didn't really, in my mid-20s, I kind of got thrown a lot of responsibility to just fix public services. And so it was just really a crash course in learning kind of all about change management in local government. And I did that for a while. And then I'm really going to age myself here, but over time, social media became a thing. Yeah, I'm old enough to remember when that was new. And I was just blown away. Like, this technology is going to change everything, not just the kind of social media aspect of it, but just the technology itself was unlike anything we'd really seen in government before. It was light, it was easy to use, you didn't need a training course to use it. It was connected to other things through APIs, which were this sort of new concept. And so I got really excited about it and talked to my boss about it. And he kind of dismissed it as a little bit of a fad, like, this is going to phase, it's going to pass. And I had a colleague who also we used to stay late and talk about it. And he got really excited about it. Anyway, long story short, he quit and then I quit, and he started this company to help cities sort of start to adopt this new technology. And I quickly joined him. We built that company up in the UK, and it really was one of the very first companies to work with local government around adopting new technology and thinking about how we can apply this new and well-designed technology that meets the needs of users, that doesn't need a 3-day training course to understand it, and how can we apply that to public services. And so I think we were probably one of the early adopters in that world, and all of that led me eventually, like many people who come to the US, I really had always wanted to live in America. I wasn't sure how to make it happen, and so but this job came along in the city of San Francisco to be the Chief Digital Services Officer, which was a new role. I hadn't had one before, and so I applied and I got the job, and so I moved to San Francisco in 2017, and I was the first Chief Digital Services Officer there at the City of San Francisco, and established a team of 50 designers, engineers, product managers, data people who really set about digitizing the city's almost 1,000 services, and that was also just a real great learning experience. Really opened my eyes to the local government context in the US, gave me a lot of exposure there. And it was, of course, during the COVID years as well. And so that really also accelerated the adoption of digital public services, as many people listening will know. And so I did that for 5 years, and then ultimately went back to school for a while, and finally this role came up at Bloomberg Philanthropies, and I just thought this is really the perfect next step for me. And especially while I was in school, I really was immersed in the world of AI and could see this emerging technology and became just so excited about it in a way that I had been all the way back in 2006 when I was super excited about social media. I could see also the applicability of this new type of technology and how it could really change the world. And I also could, the echoes of that past experience made me think, we need to not dismiss this technology as a fad or overhyped or, something to ignore or resist, but we really need to play a role in shaping how this technology gets adopted by the public sector. The public sector needs to play a role in determining what kind of AI future we want. And I'm super passionate about that, as you can tell. And so this role really just gives me the opportunity to engage with cities around the world on what their thinking is around AI and how they're adopting that technology. But ultimately, all just from way back at the beginning of my career, starting with the resident first. Like, what is it that the resident needs, and how can we design services around them using great technology?
Yeah, great. That was fun. As you were telling your story, I was really thinking, like, gosh, this job that she's in now is really a perfect fit with all the experience that you've had.
Totally.
Yeah, so I love that. And I'm eager to visit a little bit more in our conversation today about how local governments are kind of influencing the development of AI for service delivery. So hold that thought. We're going to get to that. But first, I want to talk a little bit more about What Works Cities. It's now in its 10th year. Congratulations on reaching that milestone. And I think a lot of our listening audience is probably familiar with What Works Cities. We've got some What Works Cities in our audience. But Rochelle, can you just give us a brief description of the program for any of our listeners who are not familiar with it yet?
Yes, absolutely, Lauren. And so thank you. It is an exciting year for us to hit this 10th year milestone for the program. So What Works Cities was launched as creating the first local standard of excellence on what it means to be good, well-managed local government. So really raising the bar on what does it mean if a local government is meeting the challenges of the day, has efficient service operations, and meeting the needs of the residents. We built a detailed rubric to help cities be able to strengthen and think about areas such as their budgeting, such as their contracting processes, right? Like, are you getting the desired outcomes from the contracts that you have with providers that are doing services in your city? How are you thinking about how you're managing the data within your city and using it to make decisions? Are you evaluating programs and policies to make sure they're driving change, the intended design of each of the things that you laid out? And for us, it's really a rubric to help cities lay the groundwork for stronger, more efficient decision making. We have 8 different foundational practice areas that make up the What Works City standard. It's 43 criteria, and we're looking at everything from data quality to your transparency to how leaders show up with data to how data truly informs decisions and whether or not the decisions you're making can be felt citywide and connect directly with your residents. To date, over like 100 cities across North, Central, and South America have been certified with What Works Cities, which is deeply exciting. And we have over 1,800 city leaders that are represented in our online certification community platform where they're directly sharing best practices with one another. And what's special about What Works Cities, especially for someone like myself who's a former public servant, is that the program is truly designed to be this free resource to help cities think strategically about how to invest their resources, but think strategically also about how to address challenges of the day that many cities are facing, whether it's failing infrastructure to housing to homelessness to public safety. We have a rubric to help cities be able to think strategically about how to address each of those issues, but also how to leverage the existing resources they've had to tackle those challenges. And as a former public servant, I would have loved to be part of What Works Cities when I was working in New York City government, particularly when I was chief of staff at the city's homeless services department, where you're dealing with the crises of the day on a day-to-day basis and making sure families and individuals have shelter and support that they need, but also wanting to create the space to be innovative and think differently about how we used our resources, or to think differently about how we leveraged our existing contracts with shelter providers to make sure we all achieved the desired outcome, which is to make sure individuals and families were stably housed. And so I'm excited to be able to lead a program and an initiative that is driving this change in cities across the globe.
Awesome. When I think of What Works Cities, the first thing that comes to mind is data. I sort of like see charts and graphs in my brain. And one thing that I found really interesting in our conversations to prepare for this podcast is how you explained that the What Works City criteria has evolved to include new requirements around community and resident engagement. So I'd love for you to elaborate on that and explain how you're helping cities balance the quantitative and qualitative data in decision making.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lauren. So for us, we have our standard, and every 3 years with our What Works City Standard Committee, we reevaluate it, right? We always want to make sure that we're asking cities to benchmark their practices against the cutting edge of what it means to be good, well-managed local government. In doing so, we decided about 3 years ago to say it's not enough for cities to just be good at collecting data, storing it, but how are they actually leveraging it to make decisions? How are they leveraging it to connect with their residents and incorporate their residents also in decision making, right? And so for us, the data is not just about the numbers, but it's also about that qualitative data that you should be able to get as a city leader. It's about how do you engage residents in thoughtful conversations around the different initiatives. How did you design sustainable solutions together? How do you be able to uplift challenges, right? Data numbers are only going to take you so far in an analysis of what's happening in a city, but actual conversations with city residents can help you really understand where you can drill down on where there are needs and unmet needs. And so, for example, our community is global. We are now in all of North, Central, and South America. And so Guatemala City is one of the cities that is in our network. And they wanted to improve public safety. And they knew that to improve public safety, they had to go beyond just deploying additional public safety officers and police, but to think about how to have a larger conversation with their residents about perceptions of public safety or needs that they have. And so they launched a program that combined public safety data with resident surveys. And they also held workshops to think about public spaces where there was high crime, right? To get at the root of what would this space look like if high crime didn't exist? And what do you need in this space to feel safe, to be able to use it again as a public resource? And the result was a 12% reduction in crime victims in that area, but also a 26% increase in the perception of public safety. And why that's important is you want your residents to be able to have a voice in how their cities are being shaped. You also, as a leader, don't want to miss some really great opportunities, not only to engage, but where there's needs. Because again, data can only take you so far. So it's a combination of leveraging both the qualitative and the quantitative to design solutions that are truly effective.
Yeah, thank you for giving that example. That's a pretty incredible outcome. Did you say they had a 26% swing in
Perception of
perception of
public
safety?
safety,
Yeah,
yes.
it's pretty impressive. All right. Well, you mentioned, Rochelle, that over 100 municipalities have achieved the What Works Cities certification. I'd love both of you, Carrie and Rochelle, if you could share an example of a program participant that, in your mind, really effectively solved a problem through their data analysis. Carrie, let's have you go first.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I love about our work is that it's about improving services and building capability in government, but it's also about helping governments out when they really need it the most. And I think one of the best examples I've come across is the Montevideo in Uruguay had a water crisis. They had several years of drought, 3 years of drought, and it created a higher salt level in the water supply. And they suddenly essentially ran out of drinking water. And so they used data to map out like where are all the water reserve wells, and then how can we optimize delivery of safe drinking water to the most vulnerable people. So it was a bringing together of many data sets to make that happen. And now they have sort of ongoing monitoring of that. But I just love it when a city has built the capability to use data, and then all of a sudden, when it really matters most, they can deploy it and use everything that they've learned in our programs to make that impact on the ground. And this was a really powerful example for me.
Yeah, I love that too. I mean, I know from working in government, I sometimes had that frustration of like, we are collecting so much data that sometimes it feels overwhelming and we don't even always know what to do with it. So I think that's a good example of just being ready and being nimble and having those data sets there when you encounter a problem that would really be effectively solved through deeper analysis.
Totally.
What about you, Rochelle? What example comes to mind for you of effectively solving a problem through data analysis?
No, so for us, it's hard for me to always pick one. I think cities right now are in such a unique position, right? They are dealing with all the challenges of the day. I often say at the local level, they are the front lines of all the challenges, whether it's climate change, housing, homelessness, infrastructure. When it kind of kicks up to the state or federal level, local government is probably already innovating and probably just needs funding for solutions that they've come across. And I think one of the areas where I'm seeing some really great innovation that's starting to happen with our cities is around addressing climate related events and weather emergencies. We know that right now we're experiencing what used to be the once in a lifetime storms or heat waves are now the norm in the new normal here, especially in the US. I think in 2024, the US had about 27 weather events causing damages of 1 billion or more, right? And so that's figure and that number stands out to me. And what we're seeing in our community with our leaders within What Works Cities community is they're being creative and innovative at tackling these issues. And so I have cities like Fort Lauderdale that experience, again, one of those 1 in 1,000 year type storms where rain fell 2 feet of rain fell in just 12 hours, right? So it's just unheard of in a single day. And what the city did is they analyzed flood risk data. They used GIS data to assess its stormwater assets. They also engaged residents, again, that importance of community engagement and conversations. And what they did is they started to map out where flooding could occur. They were also able to leverage these discussions and the technology to prioritize new infrastructure projects and address specific needs and risk levels. And an outcome of that is 25 additional neighborhoods that typically would not have received flood prevention upgrades, received them as part of this analysis and community engagement. And so again, tying back to the question you asked me earlier about how we now bring in that qualitative data into a discussion, that data analysis, GIS equipment, and resident feedback allowed for 25 additional neighborhoods to be able to get flood prevention upgrades. The other side of this story is heat. I think the US with the summer coming up, right, with many cities actually already feeling this, we're just getting hotter, it's getting drier. Communities are at risk, particularly of wildfires. And one of our certified cities in Austin, Texas, is experiencing this. And so right now, local leaders are actually using AI-driven wildfire detection system to enhance their response. And so they're using camera scans, and they're looking at using AI to spot smoke spots, which is really cool and interesting. And so once a wildfire is detected, the system automatically alerts authorities within Pacific radius and provides precise location data and real-time imagery to help them contain the threat. And so this is the way that cities are leveraging new technology, as Carrie had mentioned, as well as old school techniques and data and GIS equipment to really be able to hone in on what are new threats to many cities, which are climate related events.
It's incredible. It's like science fiction stuff, right? Like the robots are really getting better all the time. And thanks. I love that example. You did a really good job of, I think, illustrating how all of these pieces kind of fit together. Like, our traditional GIS tools with some of the newer technology and making that case for the qualitative analysis too. We've talked a lot on GovLove in different episodes about community engagement and the importance of community engagement and creative approaches to community engagement. So I love that is getting built into your data-driven work as well. Well, you both mentioned great examples from the international community, from Uruguay and Guatemala. Carrie, how many communities are you serving now internationally? What's the breadth of your international work?
It's just incredible to me how broad our reach is. And I think the government innovation program as a whole and all of our programs are reaching almost 1,000 cities globally. And so that's really exciting. It means there's so much space for cross collaboration. It means there's so much space for learning from each other and also just building this really powerful network of cities who are dedicated to improving their services around their residents' needs, using data and AI and other innovation practices to make that happen. So it's been really great to see just quite how far we stretch.
Yeah, that's great. Tell us something that you've learned in your international work that you would like to see replicated more in the United States.
Well, as I spoke about in the intro, I've worked in the UK extensively, and then I've just had the real privilege to see all of the amazing work that's going on in our cities as part of the Bloomberg Philanthropies network of cities. And I've seen great examples from everywhere, including the US, I will say. And I've seen, in particular in the UK, I saw many really great examples of where cities were moving beyond just digitizing what they're already doing to really thinking creatively about how do they completely redesign public services around the needs of their residents and how do they totally change the models of operation. So there's loads of really great learning there. I think in Latin America, I've seen cities like Guadalajara, for example, building technology that meets a need around permitting and then open sourcing that and then making it possible for other cities with our help to adopt that technology. And so that's a really great series of lessons there around just cities' role in building technology that defines how public services are delivered globally. So there's a ton of stuff to learn. And I think, in the US, there's many examples as well of really great innovations and uses of data. And so I think the best part, as I said before, is just how do we get cities to talk to each other and learn from each other and start to experiment with some of these things. And of course, in different contexts, it'll work differently. But I think that's part of the fun, is learning about what works where. And programs like What Works Cities really help us with that as well. There's a kind of recognized standard, but at the same time we're seeing how does that translate into different geographies.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you all through the What Works Cities program have done so much to facilitate that learning and to make resources available for cities to do more. Rochelle, I'm curious from your perspective, what are the most common barriers you encounter that hold cities back from really upping their data games?
Sure. I think one of the top things that come to mind is before, I think a lot of the work that was being done was done in a vacuum, right? And so even for What Works Cities, when we first started, we were a US based program. And then we opened our program to all of North America, Central and South America 2 years ago with the idea of the challenges that were happening in US cities were not unique to US cities. These were the same challenges that were happening across the globe. What could this look like if we created a space where everyone could connect and learn from one another and share ideas and share innovations and best practices? And I think that's one of the beauties of What Works Cities is we have created a community for over 220 cities to connect with one another, to learn. And so the barriers don't feel quite as high anymore because they have an opportunity. So if you're dealing with a weather related issue and I'm not sure where to start and you're using this AI technology, I can reach out to you and learn from you. If you are thinking strategically in a different way around how to engage your community and I need some new ideas and fresh ideas to do that, I can reach out to the community. And that's the power of what we're creating. So I think one of the things that was a barrier is like breaking down the silos that can exist between cities so that they can connect and learn from one another. And as I call it, lovingly borrow for one another, great solutions, because why keep these things to ourselves, right? We all have the higher purpose of wanting to serve residents well and improve the lives of folks. The other common challenge that we come across is people are like, I just don't know where to start, right? I think many cities have pockets of excellence and pockets of data-driven strategies and cultures, but they don't know how to make it citywide. And so my advice to most cities is that they're like, I don't know where to start, or I don't have advanced practices. I don't know if I can be part of What Works Cities. I always say, join us. That's exactly where I want you to be. And we are here to be a resource, but also we try to teach cities that they can just start small. I think choose the one small tangible project that you can kind of wrap your head around and get everyone to rally around. And that could be the thing that contributes to a larger goal. And if you can get that first small visible win, it starts to build that trust, right? It starts to build that, hey, maybe there is a different way to go about this. Maybe it also builds that executive buy-in that is also critical to build a strong citywide data culture. And so for a lot of cities, it's I don't know where to start. And we just say you got to start somewhere.
Yep.
Because once you start, then you get on that path, get a quick, visible win. Of course, I'm always going to say What Works Cities is here to be that resource for you. We have a standard on what it means to be good, well-managed local government. We have a rubric that you can measure yourself by and then really create a roadmap for cities to help them identify where they have opportunities for growth and opportunities for innovation, and where they're ready. I think one of the things we also, as a program, we don't just advocate for evaluations for cities and for them to evaluate themselves. We also evaluate ourselves. And we always want to make sure that our tools are accessible. And some of the feedback we receive is how do you make this even more accessible and easier for cities to get on a path towards certification and engage? And so one of the things we're excited to launch is going to be a new readiness assessment tool that kind of scales down our current assessment tool. And it's really just a quick 10-question rubric that cities can answer that will just give them that initial starting point. Because again, we're in the business of making sure cities can connect with resources, and anything we can do to make that easier, we want to position them to do so that they can just get started and get that first tangible win.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you've heard it here, listeners. Keep it simple. Just start somewhere, get an early win, and build from there. So I think you've given some really good advice. All right, I want to pivot our conversation now and talk about AI. AI is the big topic in local government right now. We've had several episodes on GovLove where we've been talking about different angles on AI. So, both of you, I'd love to just hear what are some of the most interesting applications that you have seen for AI to improve local service delivery.
You want me to go first?
Sure, go ahead, Carrie.
Sure. I very much think with AI, the best is yet to come. I think we're at this kind of really fascinating early stage in this technology. We're really just figuring out what it's all about. And I just love the points that Rochelle was making earlier about cities that maybe don't know where to start. And I think we see a lot of that around AI. And I really, I hear a lot of people say things like, well, your data has to be in order before you can, you can really start using AI. And I really just want to encourage cities to flip that script a bit and actually think about how can AI help us get our data in order? How can AI help us make those small first steps? And I think Rochelle's exactly right. Starting small, experimenting and iterating on that and having an early win is just absolutely the way in all change, but particularly when it comes to data and technology, that approach really works. And I just experimentation is the phase that we're in now. And so I don't want us to get too attached to any one particular solution, but to really just try them all out and see what works and what doesn't work, because that's kind of the zone we're in. That said, I think we have seen some really awesome smart applications of the technology. I think Guatemala City, for example, used AI to map out all the areas where reforestation should happen in the city, and then targeted tree planting to create this kind of reforestation program that they're now running. And so I think there are really great examples of things like that in many cities. I just got back from a trip around Latin America, visiting with some of our cities, and had the joy of visiting a small city near Mendoza in Argentina called Luján de Cuyo. And they're using AI to really understand the water supply in their city. So they get all of their water supply from a main river that runs through the city. Their population is increasing 50% year on year, and they're also losing water supply at the same rate. And so they're in this, they can foresee this real tension that they're going to have to address. And so they're using AI to understand how the water supply moves through the city. They're putting sensors on many of their infrastructure, and they're also working with residents and engaging with residents to sort of alert them in ahead of time when it looks like they're using too much water. So they're also doing a sort of public education program as well. And AI is embedded throughout all of that. And so they're able to query in natural language their entire data store around their water supply. It's super impressive. They have a small team, but they really are building out some, I think, best-in-class technology there. And so these are all really great examples, and I think we just need way more of these. We need every city to be trying out this technology to understand where is it excelling, what is it really good at, and then of course, the flip side of that is what wouldn't we want to use this for? What do we think this isn't going to be able to help us with? And of course, that's a question many people are thinking about as well. But right now, we're in that early, exciting stage of seeing what the art of the possible is.
Yeah, I love that. Rochelle, what about you? Anything you want to add as an interesting application that you've seen?
Yeah, I will say again, no surprise, this is the hottest topic and has been the hottest topic for about 2 years now within the What Works Cities community. And as Carrie mentioned, cities in our network are trying different things. I think for us, what's also important is also the responsible use of AI and how do you responsibly roll it out to improve operations, solve problems, and ensuring that your residents have an awareness of that the technology is being used and how they can also leverage it to access government services. And so we're seeing things like chatbots, I think, are the rave. Many cities have them where these chatbots are being rolled out to be able to be like these 24/7 concierge to your city. And residents at any time of day can ask questions and get connected with with services and get information that they need. And I think that's sort of democratizing information, right? And so looking at AI as a way to democratize how you can access city services. And so chatbots are a really big thing, and quite a few cities in the US as well as abroad are rolling them out. I think I saw Little Rock, Arkansas just rolled one out about 2-3 weeks ago. But I know that a year ago, Buenos Aires, Argentina also rolled out their bot called Bati. And we have many other examples within our community. Another example that I want to uplift, and it's a way of also why the reflection and conversation is important in iteration. San Jose, California, who's in our network and has been a leader in a lot of this work around AI here in the US. 57% of the city's residents speak multiple languages other than English. And so they were using like free translation services for 311 calls, which many cities do, right? It can be considered cost effective. But what was determined was that this free translation services was sometimes inaccurate or culturally offensive. And what they ended up doing in San Jose is they partnered with a technology company to be able to deploy an AI-powered 311 service. And they developed that algorithm with resident engagement to think about what are ways to improve what commonly used phrases are often used, what commonly used words are used, so that the algorithm can produce proper responses in the right context, right? And so that's a little bit of looking at not just meeting the needs of services, but doing it in a responsible way and creating it in a way that it can iterate. And what we're seeing is from that example is obviously improvements in the 311 responses to residents, things that aren't culturally offensive, and it's something that they'll continue to iterate on. And so this is an example where, the AI product is being used for good, but it's also going to continue to be iterated on with feedback from residents. Another example, and I see a lot of this in the LATAM context, is around, and Carrie had mentioned Argentina is doing some really interesting work. Mendoza, Argentina was struggling with illegal dumping, and particularly in vulnerable communities and neighborhoods, which causes, risks when it comes to water quality and public health. And they actually are using drone photography to now detect landfills. And they can detect landfills as small as 1 square meter and the type of waste that's being used. And the AI technology found the dump sites that were happening, and now they can lead better education and cleanup efforts in those areas. And so cities are jumping in on using the technology. Some of it's trial and error. And I think what's super important is that cities want to be at the forefront, I believe, of the AI revolution and way that it can improve government services and operations and connect to residents. But I also think what's super important is many of our cities are also doing it in an ethically and responsible way. And they have governance around it and guidelines and feedback loops. That way they're being really thoughtful about how the technology continues to evolve and meet the needs of its residents.
Yeah, that's some great advice to innovate and experiment, but to do so with caution. And I appreciate you bringing that into our conversation. Well, you brought up chatbots. I'm going to ask Carrie, with your background and expertise, what's your take on chatbots? How do we leverage the technology without losing that human connection in customer service?
Yeah, thanks for that question. It's, I think, as I said earlier, we're at the early stages of this technology, and I see chatbots as maybe kind of like the mini disc era of digital music, where, it's a step in a direction around AI. I think like I said before, getting too hung up on one type of technology is probably an error at this point. We want to think really expansively about the art of the possible with this technology and not just land on kind of a tool that is replicating the way that we currently deliver services, but just automating it. I think, Rochelle's examples of where language access and other things have been expanded through the use of chatbots are really exciting developments. But I also think we need a lot more research in how our users feel about engaging with chatbots. We really need to understand, is chat the best format for people? What do they feel comfortable chatting with a chatbot about? And what how do they feel trust-wise about that? So there's lots of kind of user research that I think our field really needs to bring into the conversation, rather than just kind of leading with chatbots as a solution. So that's one piece of it. And I think the other thing is to really think about the paradigms that we're in. Like I said, right now we're at the early stages, but what might the future look like? I think where we can see where the private sector is investing most of its time and energy is in agents. And so I think there might come a time when it's less about humans interacting with government information through the medium of a chatbot, and more about agents operating on behalf of our residents interacting with maybe an agent on the local government side. And so how are we designing for that future? How are we thinking about the way that might work? And what are we thinking about agent to agent interactions? I think maybe it sounds a little bit science fiction-y or a little bit too far out there, but the pace and acceleration of change that we're seeing in this field means we have to be thinking about that now. And I think, chatbots are sort of a nice early way to explore that, but I want us to see I want to see us be a lot more thoughtful across the board about how we implement that technology and how we think about what the future might look like.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, we're about out of time. Rochelle, I want to ask you just to give some advice to our listeners if they're interested in becoming a What Works City, how they can find more information and get involved. You mentioned the readiness assessment tool. Where would someone start if they're interested in certification?
Great. If you're interested in learning more about What Works Cities, the first place I'll direct you to is our very own platform, whatworkscities.bloomberg.org. It has a wealth of information, valuable information, and examples of how cities are using data across our network. You can also check out how over the 100 cities that are now certified with us are leveraging data or use it to do strategic planning, use it to engage their residents. We have web pages for each of our certified cities highlighting their work and how they address challenges. It's an incredible repository. And obviously now, as we are a global program, it continues to grow and uplift global practices as well as US-based practices. I also encourage local leaders to take our assessment. It is the first step towards certification, and it's for cities at all points on their data journey. I'm going to say that one more time. For all points on their data journey. So you do not have to have data practices in place or be top of the class to be able to join our community and work with us. And even if you're an advanced city, you still would benefit from taking our assessment because we can help you strategically think about your road ahead and where you want to either double down on practices or where you actually may have some gaps, because we know sustainability is not the easiest thing. And so it's a valuable benchmark, free tool for cities to use. Our team will work alongside any city that takes an assessment to create a roadmap for you that's customized on improvements. And then most importantly, I think you also get to join our community and get access to our workshops, our tools, our resources, and then a community of over 2,000 leaders globally that are sharing best practices.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for joining the conversation today and for the work that you are doing to celebrate and expand excellence in local government service delivery. I really enjoyed our conversation. So, Rochelle, we're going to give you our closer for the episode. If you could be the GovLove DJ, what song would you pick as our exit music?
You know, I thought long and hard about this. Someone who loves music.
This question stresses people out, but
it does.
It's supposed to be a softball.
It is a softball. It's a softball. But the reason why I like this question, because we had these great conversations today about work in cities, what's happening, what drove all of us to this work, right? Wanting to improve resident lives. And the song that actually came to mind is Stevie Wonder, Living for the City. And at the end of this song, the last few bars, it's, I hope you hear inside my voice sorrow and that I motivate you to make a better tomorrow. And that's what we're all here to do, is to make that better tomorrow for all residents, for all people. And that's what Bloomberg Philanthropies is committed to doing. That's what Works Cities is here to do. We are tools and resources in a community to make that better tomorrow. So that's my song, Living for the City, Stevie Wonder.
100%. We're all working for that better tomorrow. Perfectly said. Great way to wrap up our episode. So that is our episode for today. Thank you so much to our guests, Rochelle Haynes and Carrie Bishop from the What Works Cities program. Thank you for listening. You can reach us at elgl.org/GovLove or on social media at GovLove Podcast. This has been GovLove, a podcast about local government.
Scrub the floors for me, and you best believe she hardly gets a pity. Living in jail.